What is up, everyone? Brandon Ferst, aka First Report, representing the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are First. Welcome in to another edition of In the Paint here on the network. We break down everything college basketball has to offer. And with me, as always, is my friend and co-host, who I have to give out a little shout out to. Appreciate you gracing the people with your the kind of solo paint last week. You appreciate it, kind of filling in. Despite what Raider Jim said, I was not in Philadelphia. I tell you though, if that was a possibility, if I felt like my presence would have fired that team up, I would have done it. But no, that was not the case. It's a good guess though. It's a good guess. But Raider Jim, how you? Or actually, hold on. Let me start over. You can find Mr. Martinez at Raider Jim 1090. How you doing tonight, sir?
Hey, I'm doing very, very well. Here we are. We thought we were all done with the lunacy because the NFL season was so up and down, and it was like watching a pinball go crazy. And now look at the top 25 in NCAA men's basketball. It looks like we're in for another wild ride of, who's going to win King of the Hill.
Exactly. I mean, we are recording on the 11th of January. It's a Thursday. And we have no undefeated teams left in college basketball. And I didn't go back and check or do the whole Elias Sports Bureau and dive into the numbers. But this has to be one of the earliest seasons that I can remember where we're not running into February, even March with someone running an undefeated record. And a big reason why is pretty much the last 24 hours. We had number 1, 2, 3, and 5 not only all lose, but all lose to unranked football schools. And look, with all due respect to these schools I'm going to name off, they are 100, or at least 3 out of the 4 I know are football schools. Nebraska took down Purdue, the number 1 team. Iowa State, I don't know, maybe Iowa State's a basketball school, but that's up for debate. They took down Houston. That was the final unbeaten. And then Kansas falls to UCF, and Tennessee falls to Mississippi State. I might have to go back into the records and listen back to our podcast here since we've started the paint. I mean, it's been at least 2 years. I'm pretty sure this is the first time I've uttered the word Mississippi State. So congratulations to them getting a big win over Tennessee. But I think overall, it's really diving into what we've seen in last year's tournament and early on this season. I mean, it kind of started with James Madison, even Grand Canyon taking down San Diego State, and things like that. Seems like every 3 days we have a big upset or, something that kind of shakes it up. But this past 24 hours, I think, has truly taken the cake. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts on, January madness?
Well, you're right. It's so early to see no undefeated teams. I think it was only 3 years ago, maybe, when it was the battle for number 1, Baylor and Gonzaga. And I think they went down to the wire at running undefeated. They both ran their conferences. They both went into the tournament undefeated, if I'm not mistaken. And this is just, such the opposite side of that coin that it is fantastic to watch, though. I mean, Arizona was down to 10 last week, finally back up to 8. Marquette was hanging in there, and then Marquette drops 2 games, the last 2 games they've played, and they're not doing well in conference play. They've lost, I think, 3 very important games in conference play already. It's exciting, and it makes it more enjoyable to watch. I'd really have to dissect and see how much of this could be attributed to anything that has gone on with the transfer portal this season. Who
Agreed.
knows? Except for we know for a fact with respect to Purdue, Zach Edey goes over there, and obviously he's making the difference.
Yeah, and Purdue is on that kind of redemption arc, if you will, that they're kind of looking at the Virginia that won the title in maybe 19 or 20. But it was followed up by them being the 1 seed, and they were the first 1 seed to lose to a 16. And then the following year, they ran the table and won the national title. Obviously, Purdue kind of trying to do that as well. I think it really does speak to the parity that we have seen. Obviously, transfer portal, NIL, all that stuff really coming to a head. But I also do think that we're getting to a point a lot of the time. I mean, all those games right there, they're all conference foes. Now, Houston and Iowa State's a little weird, even Kansas UCF, because both Houston and UCF, it's their first year playing, I believe their first year playing Big 12 basketball, almost positive on that. But, Tennessee, Mississippi State, or even, Nebraska, Purdue, there's a lot of familiarity between these teams, and you kind of know what you're going to get out of these guys, especially with Purdue. It's the inside-outside game. If you're going to stop Zach Edey, they're going to need to hit their outside shots. And Nebraska was just hot. I think if Nebraska plays Purdue 10 times in that game, Purdue wins 8 of them, but Nebraska just didn't miss a shot. It seemed like they were incredible. But at the end of the day, when March rolls around, it's not going to matter what you did to get there. Purdue can be the ones to talk about that. Even Arizona last year, going down to Princeton, I believe, as a 2 seed. So it's that 60 minutes, or I guess 40 minutes, I should say, where anything can happen. A team can get hot and take down the big boys. And I think this is going to continue not only through conference play into conference tournaments, but I think we're going to be in for another wild March madness. And
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's going to be very interesting. And personally, I can't wait now that kind of football here in the next month is going to be winding down. Once the Super Bowl ends, it's like all eyes on college basketball. Cannot wait for that time. Really, really get serious. And we are already getting pretty serious as conference play has heated up. As I said, kind of those 4 games, all conference opponents, pretty much all conference going forward. Although I did see kind of an oddity on the schedule for Gonzaga, Raider Jim. They're going to Rupp Arena in February. That's going to be a very interesting matchup.
Apparently, there's a few of the universities out there and programs that have this odd middle of the conference schedule game that they're going to go play, and Gonzaga is one of those teams. But yeah, that's going to be something to see.
Yeah, and the majority of the games we are going to be seeing right now are going to be conference play, so it is kind of a moment for us to kind of maybe think about what are the conferences that we're most intrigued by, most interested by, the ones that we're going to be keeping our eye on going forward. Raider Jim, I'll give you the honors to give us your thoughts on the conference play.
Sure, some of the usual suspects, of course. I like watching. I'm following the ACC to see what's going on over there. They're looking like the ACC, the Big East as well. Big Ten, but for another reason. When was the last time you looked at the Big Ten standings and saw both Michigan teams way down at the bottom? Mm-hmm. And Michigan State, I think, is like 3rd, 4th from the bottom. I think Michigan is last. And what a turnaround in the wrong direction for that program. And we'll see how long the board is going to put up with that before they start making some changes. And then another one, it's a fun one. St. Peter's was kind of like the darlings mm-hmm. of the tournament. Was it last year or the year before?
It might have been the year before.
Yeah, and so I was looking at that's right, because their coach moved on right after mm-hmm. that. Metro Atlantic Conference, St. Peter's, sitting at number 1 right now in the early stages of conference play. They're 8-5 overall, but they're undefeated in conference play. So you got to hand it to them, and you got to wait and see if these guys are going to pull another magic act and somehow end up in the tournament and make another good run. And of course, I'm watching the swan song for the Pac-12 right there. One of the sad things to see, if this is it, if this is the end of Pac-12 basketball, which we're all pretty sure it is. But boy, to think that John Wooden's team, his dynasty, is sitting right now at 6-9, and they're not going to go out and do that school respect by, running the table, but they're just not going to do it. It doesn't look like. So that, and of course the SEC.
Yeah, the UCLA situation, as a USC fan, I kind of snicker off to the side. But as a college basketball fan overall, you want to kind of see the Blue Bloods perform well. And this, I think, I would probably have to go back and look, but this might end up going down as one of the worst seasons in UCLA basketball this century. Yeah, and they haven't been world beaters. I think they made a national title game against that Florida team that went back to back, and maybe a LaMelo Ball run in them, but they haven't been to that level kind of I go back to Steve Lavin or the late 90s, or even obviously Wooden, the team of the century, essentially. Not so much anymore. I got my eye on first and foremost the Big East, because as I've kind of alluded to, the Big East it just seems like a heavyweight battle royal. It's just, you're just going to kind of wait on the other side of the door and see who emerges with the least amount of, I guess, blood on their face, if you will. And we'll see how that goes. I mean, you look at Marquette, who I think Marquette might be one of the best teams in the country. They're sitting 8th in the conference there. And it is still early, but still already 2 losses in a conference, and they're ranked number 11 in the country. So that kind of tells you what it's like to play in the Big East. On the other side of it too, I'm intrigued by the Big 12, and it's because of Houston. Now, Houston for the last few years has been a team that we've all been looking at as a Final Four candidate. They might even made a Final Four a few years back. But the one thing we kind of knocked them on was, look, they play in the AAC, and yeah, right. Memphis is okay. Tulsa has some moments, fill in your blank here. But now they're moving up to the big leagues. And obviously Iowa State clipped them. But when you're dealing with teams like, Baylor, the Kansas States, the Oklahoma, keep an eye on Oklahoma, by the way. I think they're very quietly a very good basketball team. And even Kansas, 1-1 in that conference. It's going to be interesting. Texas kind of at the bottom right now. They're number 25 in the country, but I think the Big 12 might be the deepest overall when it's all said and done. And I'm really intrigued to see where Houston kind of ends up after a full Big 12 schedule, because look, it's a lot different going to Lawrence and to Waco and to Austin than it is to, with all due respect, El Paso and the Memphises and things like that. So we'll see how Houston kind of ends up when it's all said and done. But I'm really intrigued. And this is kind of the beginning. I mean, I had to check myself because I did go to the AAC's page first to look for Houston. And I went, wait a second. I went, oh, that's right. They're in the Big 12. So, and I have a feeling next year I'm going to be doing the same thing. Wait, where's Stanford? Where's Cal? Where's Washington again? So yeah, that's going to be going forward a little bit of adjustment. But for Houston, I'm really intrigued to see how they kind of end up when in the big leagues, if you will. But speaking of the big leagues, it is time for our player spotlight. And unfortunately for me, as a San Diego State fan, I still have nightmares of this guy in the national championship game. Seems like he sent everything back in the post. It is the sophomore center out of UConn, 7'2", big kid, Donovan Clingan. He is our player spotlight. As I said, he is a sophomore. Came off the bench for some games last year for UConn, and that really speaks to the depth that the Huskies had. He's kind of stepped into an obviously bigger role, and he has been incredible. Raider Jim, give us your thoughts on the sophomore center out of UConn, Donovan Clingan.
Yeah, like you said, 7'2", 280. He is a beast of a kid. Played behind Adame Sanogo last year.
It's incredible.
Was just force. I mean, if that's who you're playing behind and who you're working out against in workout sessions, my goodness, then he learned hard. He took some knocks, I'm sure, but he's good. The only thing I have against the young man is apparently it's looking like he might be a little injury prone. He's out right now for I've seen conflicting things. I know he was injured around the holiday time, and they said he'd be out 3 to 4 weeks. But then I read something that was date stamped just a few days ago that is still stating another 3 to 4 weeks. If they lose him for all of January and part of February even, that's going to be hard for them to cover that kind of an absence in the lineup. But if he can come back, then it's just going to be a matter of keeping him healthy, and he's going to have to play smart and keep himself healthy. Pardon me 1 second while I get rid of my friends.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. December 20th. They lost that game to Seton Hall, and that was looks like he only played 14 minutes there. So that was about almost 2 weeks ago. So could be looking at another month almost. That's going to be tough, but I do think there's enough there for UConn. But anyways, back to you.
And I think it was one of those situations where he had a great first half, and then this might have been the game where he had a great first half, came out the second half, and that's when he injured his foot. They got him off. They tried to get him back in there. He wanted to get back in and try to complete the game, and he could not do it. And so, that's a little concerning. It made me think of not real injury prone, but when you see the likes of a Chet Holmgren, when he went down last year, you just keep your fingers crossed and hope that doesn't become something that is going to nag at them for the rest of their careers. These are big kids, big boys, and it takes a lot more for them to heal.
Yeah, this is
especially to jump. To jump if you got a foot injury and part of your job is to jump up and grab rebounds. That's that takes a toll.
And your lower half is carrying around a lot of weight. And he's 280. He's not by any means out of shape or anything like that. But when you're 7'2", 280, the one thing you brought up with Holmgren, they wanted him to put on weight. I think at the next level with Clingan, I think they might say, hey, let's check 265. Let's see if we can get you to 265. Once again, I'm not saying that that's the reason he got injured or something like that, but I do think at the next level, which I also do believe at some point, maybe not this year. I think he's probably got a year or two that he should probably stick around here in college. But I think he does have an NBA career ahead of him just because, look, I've always said, if you're 7 feet and you can dribble a basketball, you can probably make a professional basketball team. And when you're, 7'2", 280 with the skills that this kid has, I think there will be a spot for him at the next level. But it'll be interesting. Even, once again, I don't think after this season he'll, head out, especially if he's going to miss what it seems like at least 6 weeks of a season. Might be best to stick around. He is a Connecticut kid as well. He was born in Bristol. So he's playing for his, home state team.
Right.
So, no rush for him to get to the next level. The one knock that I guess I will say, look, the free throw percentage, it's hovering around 53%. It's not ideal, but look, there aren't too many 7-footers that are shooting in the 70 percentage. But, if you're looking for a knock, that could be it. Now the numbers don't jump out. It's pretty much 14 points and 6 boards. However, a lot of this in the system that he plays in, they ask him to kind of be, the post presence. And He's been that. He's averaging 2 blocks a game this year. And he's getting pretty much almost double the amount of time. Like I said, he came off the bench last year, and they've even kind of slowed his, doesn't get a ton of minutes for a starter, but really impressive to see what he's done. Obviously, hopefully get a speedy recovery coming forward. And I think for UConn, they might look and say, hey, we have a luxury that let's make sure that Donovan is 100% healthy.
Absolutely.
So that when he does come back, he's ready to, lead us on a run. And I'm really excited to see what UConn can put together, because I think this has the opportunity to be the best chance of a back-to-back repeat champ we've seen in some time. There's a lot of talent on this Connecticut team. And 14-2 at the moment. Looks like in this weekend they'll be playing up against Georgetown. And unfortunately for Ed Cooley, has not been able to flip the switch at Georgetown as quickly as I think they wanted. But it's going to be a battle. Once again, it's the Big East, so you never truly know. But
and this kid he got playing time in the national championship game against the Aztecs. I think he ended up with 3 points and a couple rebounds, something like that. But they didn't keep him on the bench and make him just sit there. They actually made sure he got his time, and there was a lot of speculation that he was going to enter the NBA draft last year, but then he came back. 19 years old, NBA draft. They're sending him in there on all size at that point. But I think there's a difference between having size and without finesse. And at that level, you need to have the finesse. And almost to a point, I think, referring back to Chet Holmgren, I think maybe his injury, as devastating as it was, might have been one of the better things that ever happened to him, because it gave him time to sit back, travel with the team, be with the team, get into the workouts when he could. More importantly, work with those trainers at that level and that kid is playing lights out basketball right now.
I agree. He's been one of the, and I'm not a big NBA guy, but I've heard a lot of rumblings that he has really taken steps forward, and apparently he's eligible for Rookie of the Year, even though he's technically not a rookie. So hopefully, best of luck for him going forward. That would be a nice little, I don't want to say redemption. He doesn't have to prove anything to us, but I think for him, it's nice to get out there and put his best foot forward and mainly be healthy. I can only imagine how frustrating that is for a young kid. I think it happened in like summer league. So it was like you got like a little taste of it, and it's like, oh, we'll see you next year. That's got to be incredibly frustrating, especially for a young man like him. It's going to be a heck of a run. But I going back to the national championship game, that was probably the most frustrating part as an SDSU fan. It's like we got and you had his name earlier, and I don't have it off the top of my head, but Adore or whatever. I mean, he was a monster in the middle, and it's like, oh, okay. It's like you take a deep breath and you're like, all right, here's our chance. He's out. Oh, wait, this kid's bigger. This kid's bigger and stronger.
Exactly.
What's going on? And it was just so frustrating. Now, once again, I don't think San Diego State had much of a chance in that one. They played their tails off, but UConn was just too good. But that really goes to speak it to what the program that has been built by Bobby Hurley. Who, once again, if you don't know a whole lot about basketball, the Hurley family and coaching is top tier. But with that being said, time to focus our attention to our specific teams and conferences. Raider Jim, of course, always keeping an eye on both the West Coast Conference and his Gonzaga Bulldogs. Raider Jim, the floor is yours.
Yeah, and I'm going to pause for just a second and back up to a quick follow-up to somebody I talked about last week, and that's Terrence Shannon Jr. from Illinois. And I don't know if you caught the news over the last couple of days that he's actually filing a restraining order against the university in an effort to force them basically to reinstate him. Because at this point, the NCAA and the university rulings are still in place for, hey, given what's going on with you right now in this, the allegations or your involvement or you were in the neighborhood, whatever the case is, you cannot play basketball for the university right now. And I also believe that goes against his eligibility. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that is the situation here because this isn't an injury.
Yeah, and it's not a red shirt. Yeah, like you said, they haven't declared him as a red shirt, things like that. There's a lot of those. So yeah, that will be
interested to see how they rule on that, how the courts rule on that, and if the university will then, have to allow him back on the court. And then how will the university do that? Do they reinstate him and say, fine, put your uniform on, but we can't let you on the floor? Because the university is going to take a lot of flack if they let that happen, given today's culture. And, so to be continued on that one, but I thought it was worth mentioning because that's kind of what I talked about with him, a lot of what I talked about with him last week. Moving on, though, to the West Coast Conference, Gonzaga got their wake-up call on December 29th when the SDSU Aztecs went in, took care of them in their own backyard. Nobody ever likes to do that. You don't want to get beat. You don't want to get beat in your own home. That's just not nice. It's like they came in, they played with your ball, and then they took the ball home with them, and that's what happened. But maybe that's just what Gonzaga needed. Sitting right now at number 23 or 21, depending on if you look at AP or the coaches. And quite honestly, I'll bet Mark Hughes kind of okay with that. They salvaged it. They salvaged the top 25 and were able to put together two strong conference wins back to back. They're 2-0 in conference play. They are Gonzaga, and I'm sure that after the Aztec game, he let them know, you got one job now. You better run the conference. You better run the conference. You better get the one seed in that conference tournament because you're not going to get there with glitz and glamour like you have in the past. And I think again with Anton Watson, his leadership, he's probably had the same things to say to some of the younger kids, the younger teammates, the newer teammates, sitting at 2-0 right now with a couple other schools. Loyola Marymount has dropped down. They were surprisingly good last year, but they're way down at the bottom of the West Coast Conference. USD who is still surprisingly better and, positively better with their 10 victories. But of late, they've kind of cooled off again, especially against Gonzaga the other night. I really thought that they were going to give Gonzaga more run for their money than they did, but they did not. St. Mary's has got their 2 conference wins right now. So West Coast Conference play is going to be fun to watch. Matter of fact, it will be 1 week from this Saturday. Gonzaga is going to roll into town and be here at what used to be the Jenny Craig Pavilion. I think they still call it that, even though Jenny Craig, the company, is no longer around. So we'll see what happens there. And they've got Pepperdine, and I can't recall who their other conference game is against before they come to San Diego, but the schedule's actually lined up in their favor right now.
Yeah, it was an unfortunate, situation for Gonzaga against San Diego State. And I know you put your thoughts forward last week. For me, on San Diego State side, obviously, to go to Spokane and win was incredibly impressive. For me, I have to go back. I don't remember the exact year, but it was San Diego State. They went to Lawrence and went to Allen Fieldhouse and beat Joel Embiid and the Kansas Jayhawks. I would put that right here with this Gonzaga win. Now, obviously, Kansas is kind of the bluest of the blue bloods, but what I was very impressed with in San Diego State, 2 things. First and foremost, Jaden Ledee did not lead the team in scoring. And it was others. All, for the 5 or 6 team reports I've done this season, I've just kind of been saying, like, yes, San Diego State looks good. Jaden Ledee looks good. However, he kind of needs a Robin. He if he's going to be Batman, that's great, but he needs a Robin. He needs an Alfred. He needs a, whatever, Batwing, whatever in that lore. So I think with Reese Waters stepping forward, and San Diego State knocking down shots, that's the one thing that I hadn't seen from San Diego State in a while, was their ability to make big shots. And the other thing that really did impress me, San Diego State pretty much, I would say, kind of controlled the game in the first half. After the first 5 minutes, they kind of settled down, took control of the game. And, the first 5 minutes, the second half, same thing. And Gonzaga made a run. They made a run at San Diego State, and San Diego State came right out and punched right back. Went on like a 6, 7, 8 run to just push them back. And they never really let them back in the game again. As a San Diego State fan, that's not something I'm used to seeing. So I was very impressed with what they put forward. Now, since then, the Aztecs have gone on a nice little run. Obviously, I was very worried that they were going to have a letdown against Fresno State. They dominated Fresno State. They took care of business against UNLV. Obviously, UNLV not kind of the level that they've been over the past few years. Only 8-6, but for San Diego State to handle their business, got the job done. Got a little bit of a scare against San Jose State, which isn't ideal because San Jose State is towards the bottom. The game was in San Jose. So, the Aztecs got the job done. Jaden Ledee, another 30-plus point effort. He is putting himself on the map as one of the better players in the country. Very impressed to see his kind of progression from last year to where he is now. He's been put into a situation where he has to kind of be the leader, and he has been so good this year. So the Aztecs look good. Currently, the Aztecs, and I just lost my notes. There we are. 14-2, 3-0 in the Mountain West, which is good enough to be tops in that conference, or at least tied for tops with Utah State. Utah State is having a fantastic year.
Monster season.
They're actually ranked, they look really good. Ranked number 20, San Diego State ranked number 19 at the moment, depending on what poll you look at. But both Utah State and San Diego State are 3-0 in conference play. Utah State 15-1 overall. And then you have Nevada and Boise State behind them at 2-0. Nevada 15-1 overall, and Boise 11-4. The one thing that does jump out to me when you look at those 4 teams that are undefeated in the conference, being San Diego State, Utah State, Boise, and Nevada, all of these teams are undefeated at home. So that just goes to show how tough it is, even with San Jose State. Not going to be a team that's going to win too many games in the Mountain West. However, you got to go on the road in this conference. It's going to be a battle. And San Diego State is going to face Nevada and Boise. Pretty much both of those teams in the next 9 days. So big shakeup coming in the Mountain West. We'll see kind of how San Diego State fares. This coming week, they'll have a Saturday matchup, 11 a.m. for all of us West Coast people. Make sure you keep an eye on that. They're heading to Albuquerque to face a really good New Mexico team. Bit of a tough start in conference, but 13-3 overall, also undefeated at home. So that'll be a challenge. And then Nevada at Viejas over here. And then next Saturday, San Diego State heads to Boise. That'll be a big one. Always tough to face the Broncos in Boise. I think the Mountain West is going to be, once again, another 3 or 4 big conference. They're really, really good. I think they're really deep. As long as some of these teams don't beat each other up, I think we see 4 teams come out, and I think San Diego State has the pole position for that. Been very impressed with what the Aztecs have put forward over the last few weeks. I was a little sour on them after the Grand Canyon performance, but they have really rebounded in a big, big way.
Absolutely, they have.
Even the game against Washington, even though I think that was before the Grand Canyon situation. It's very, very impressive to see what San Diego State has put forward, and they're building on what happened last year, and that is the key, I think, for the Aztecs, to not let us forget about last season. Even though, once again, we cannot expect that to be the norm as Aztec fans. Let's look for Sweet 16s. That's what we need to expect. You're just going to hurt yourself if you're expecting to be a Final Four team every year. But with that being said, time to focus our attention on what is to come, if you will. Some of the top upcoming games, and there are a lot of really good ones, even ones that I didn't even put down. Conference play is officially upon us, and we're going to start this Saturday, maybe the game of the early season. It is that Oklahoma team that I told you to keep an eye on. They're ranked number 9. They're going to head to Lawrence and face the, as of right now, number 3 ranked Kansas Jayhawks. Also out there in the ACC, Syracuse. They're going to head to Chapel Hill. North Carolina, very quietly as North Carolina can be, ranked number 7 in the country. That's where they are. They'll probably move up as well with all the shakeup. And then, of course, that game that I just kind of alluded to, San Diego State heading to Albuquerque to face the Lobos. And then we look at Monday night, what a matchup in the Big East we're going to have. Villanova heads to Milwaukee to face the number 11 ranked Marquette Golden Eagles. Marquette is a team that you need to keep an eye on, a definite national championship contender. And then Tuesday, Battle of Indiana. Purdue, number 1 in the country, or at least at this recording, number 1 in the country. They will face the Hoosiers of Indiana. Number 14, Baylor heads to Manhattan. No, not New York. We're talking Kansas. They will face the Wildcats of Kansas State. And then in the Mountain West, a big showdown, number 20, Utah State at New Mexico. New Mexico is going to really know a lot about their squad by the end of this week, after taking on San Diego State and New Mexico at home. And then finally, next Wednesday, we're going to be looking at Creighton and UConn, number 22 Creighton and number 4 UConn. That'll be a good matchup. Mississippi State, we'll see how they look after a few games since the Tennessee win. They'll get another chance to follow that up, however. They're going to head to Lexington to face number 16 Kentucky. And then Texas Tech heads to Houston to face number 2, the Houston Cougars. And finally, a game I also alluded to earlier, Nevada at number 19, San Diego State. Raider Jim, what games are you keeping an eye on this list, or any others I may have missed?
Very, very mediocre team. You would call them mediocre by virtue of their record, their wins and losses. They're 0-2 in conference play right now. But pay attention to the game on Saturday when Kentucky rolls in to play Texas A&M. A&M has this way about them where they pull off these games that they're not supposed to win. Not unlike Nebraska taking care of business against Purdue the other day. It's the same type of situation, so I'm kind of curious about that. And again, to reiterate something I said last week, boy, hats off to that Kentucky program.
Yeah.
They took what was a real bad season, and they have just turned it around this year, and they are looking like the old Kentucky team, and it's nice to see. Of course, the other games you mentioned, that team from Oklahoma, watch out. I'm not going to be surprised if they walk into Kansas and get the victory. I'm going to check the spread on that one because I'm already leaning towards Oklahoma on that one just by virtue of the way that they are playing right now, the pace of the game. They're playing good both sides of the ball, offense and defense. North Carolina, you said it. I'm looking at the top 25 before we hit record on this thing, and I was like, no kidding. They're all the way up to number 7. How about that? And, why not? Great program. I think the Aztecs are going to have a fine time down there in New Mexico. They're not going to not going to run into anything they can't take care of. I just hope they don't play too many close games in conference play because pretty soon too close gets to be one that got away from you. And they can't have any of these get away from them. They've got to make sure that they have to set their own table for this one going into March. And then Monday, that game against Nova against Marquette. Marquette has dropped games to Seton Hall and Butler. And now they're going to play Villanova, and they better have all their I's dotted and T's crossed and everything ready to go. Can't slip up against Villanova because that would be a big mistake. And then down the road, let's see, where was the one that you had down here that I'm looking forward to? A week from yesterday, next Wednesday. Creighton at UConn. That's going to be a fun one to watch. It's going to be a different pace probably. I think Creighton's going to come out and try to run it and keep it in motion real fast, take a lot of shots, and we'll see what the big guy, if he's back, is Donovan Clingan, what he's going to be able to do to slow down the Creighton game.
Yeah, I agree. Going back to the San Diego State, playing those, close games. San Diego State's, in that situation where, one or two bad conference losses, that might cost you 3 or 4 seeds because unfortunately, as of right now, Grand Canyon is having a really, really good season. However, that still may go down as a bad loss depending on how their season continues to unfold. But and the BYU, I don't think will go down as a bad loss. I think BYU is actually a really good basketball team. But you're right. Even that game, if they were to drop that one to San Jose State, that's one that you go, oh, you know what? We thought maybe a 5 seed, but look at this. Yeah, let's drop them to a 6 or a 7. And that's a big difference there. But I agree with you. I'm really excited. I kind of call it that measuring stick game for Oklahoma. Oklahoma has played some really good teams. I understand that. But it's different in the Big 12 when you're going to Lawrence. I think it's just that's kind of your regular season championship in the Big 12, essentially. How do you stack up with the big dog? And I'm excited to see how they do. I'm with you, though. I think Oklahoma has more than enough talent to go in and take care of Kansas. I'm super excited for that one. And the going down the list, Texas Tech, Houston as well. Like I said, this is going to kind of be a theme for me going forward is seeing how Houston deals with this pressure. Now, they are leaps and bounds better than Texas Tech. However, how are they going to deal with Texas Tech after, or these type of teams after playing a Big 12 schedule? You're not going to get kind of the layups you get in the AAC that you get here. Even the layups in the Big 12 are really good basketball teams when it's all said and done. Houston is better, yes, but they are not complete walkovers. And that Creighton UConn game, once again, I think the Big East is just like, it's TV, must-see TV right now because you're just kind of figuring who's going to survive this. Which may be a negative. And I think that really hurt UConn in the seeding process last year. The way the Big East was just this kind of battle royal where everyone's beating up on everyone. It kind of hurts the overall, seeding for some of these bigger teams. But at the end of the day, as March proves, that's when you determine it. Your seed doesn't determine whether or not you're a national champion. Your play on the floor does. And UConn proved that last year. Really excited to see how Creighton stacks up to them because I do think Creighton's a pretty good team as well. But it's going to be a lot of fun as we kind of really start to get into these really, really important matchups. I mean, we're only in January. We're still 2 months away from conference tournament play, and it's already heating up. I cannot wait to dive into it. I mean, we're going to blink and it'll be our tournament preview show. That's just kind of the way it seems like it's gone. But that's all we have for you, Raider Jim. Time for our final thoughts for the In the Paint podcast. What you got for us?
You pretty much said it. I mean, we're 49 days away. In 49 days, it's going to be March 1st. We get one extra day in February this year. Don't forget that. Leap Day. Can't wait for that. I was just for the fun of it looking up some of the futures. Kansas, as well as they are playing, you can get Kansas as a future for the national championship, 17-1.
Wow.
That is really, really attractive. You can also get Kansas at 20-1, and then just for fun, they actually have on the list as long shots to consider. And you know how we are. We look at horses a lot, and so when they give you a long shot, you got to look at them. They actually have Creighton down at 30-1. So apparently that's there. And then surprisingly enough, I didn't think I'd see them on the list. Texas A&M is on the list of long shots to watch because if they break in, they say these kids can make anything happen. 70-1. Now that might be worth a couple bucks.
Do you happen to know if it's right there in front of you what the numbers are on Oklahoma? If it's listed, no problem. If not,
I believe it will be. Let's see, because it's great. Wow, they're way down on the list too.
interesting.
Oklahoma. Championship odds, Oklahoma is right now at plus 6,000.
Wow, 60-1.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, the number
right after
9
them,
team in
San
the
Diego
country.
Aztecs are right after them.
Wow. I mean,
But
look,
get a
I
load
love
of this. Now get a load of this. And who writes this? Michigan State, 40-1.
Yeah, of course, it's Izzo. That's the Izzo magic, you know. It's like the muscle memory. They can't go lower than 40-1. You know, you don't. I think the books are like, look, I don't care if they're 0 and whatever. We cannot give a higher number than that. If Izzo gets hot in March, we are not paying these tickets. Darn it. But yeah, that's crazy to me. Whew, long way to go though, and I think obviously, you know, if we were 2 weeks away, I think those numbers would shrink. But Kansas, it's 17-1. Wow.
Oh, and I'd be placing a lot of. Yeah, that might be.
Yeah, that's my problem when it comes to. I try and stay off of those because I'll walk away. It's like going into my dad. It used to be for my dad. It was Harbor Freight. He would go in looking for one thing and he'd walk out with 15 more because it was like, ooh, I could maybe use this. That's how I am sometimes when I look at these college basketball futures. Like, oh, look, I only came to look at Oklahoma, and next thing I know, I have 10 futures on 10 different teams. Here we go. But yeah, for my final thoughts, I'm going to switch gears. Obviously, we do our NFL podcast and all that stuff. It's been a crazy 24 hours in the sport of football when it comes to kind of coach departures, really a changing of the guard with Pete Carroll and Nick Saban. And now today it was announced that Bill Belichick, he is moving on from the Patriots, or they're mutually parting ways. And I kind of likened it to where we are in college basketball. We still kind of have John Calipari and Mike Izzo kind of sticking, or Tom Izzo, Mike Izzo. Who's Mike Izzo? Tom Izzo. Anyways, I don't know where Mike Izzo came from. Anyways, Tom Izzo, they're kind of obviously towards the end. I don't know how long Izzo has left. I think maybe Calipari might stick around for a little bit longer than him. But we are kind of looking at the changing of the guard coming up here in college basketball. Now, Mark Few also does need to be put on that list as well. But we aren't seeing the kind of the juggernauts. There's the Roy Williams, the Coach K's,
right.
the Jim Boeheims, the Jay Wrights, of that. So we're kind of seeing that changing of the guard. Now we're looking at, Tommy Lloyd out there in Arizona. And, even the Bruce Pearls of the world, even Bruce Pearl's kind of one of the more like longer in the tooth coaches these days. So, it's just a moment where we are seeing that kind of changing of the guard in football. I think we are going to see it at the college basketball level as well. Just enjoy them while they're here, because Tom Izzo, like that Michigan State team, when March rolls around, and if they get a 12 seed, I tell you what, there aren't going to be a whole lot of teams that are excited to see them in their side of the bracket. And it's a lot of it because of what Izzo can bring to the table. So kind of, as we say, we're all getting older, and, our childhoods or, our fond memories, those coaches fleeting very quickly. So enjoy it now. But with that being said, thank you all so much for listening to this episode of the In the Paint podcast, presented by the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. It is time for you all to go wash your hands and stop hating everybody. We'll talk to you all very soon. Have a great night. Take care.
Go Zags.